Good evening to all. So in our last class we just covered my macro variables. There are different ways to create macro variables. Like we can use percentage let statement, we can use calls input, percentage local, percentage global, which identify the scope of your macro variable. We can use select into in ProcSQL. So and how to use, I already told you that macro variables are always character type. So how to do mathematical operations, how to resolve a macro variable, all these things we already covered in our last class. So anyone has any doubt or questions? I think I already shared a last class video to Excel R team. So maybe they have uploaded or maybe they will upload it. Okay, so today I am going to cover macro, SAS macros. So why we are using SAS macros? So basically macros you can see is very common. In other languages we call it the functions. Okay, and basically you have some predefined stuff is there, like predefined reports are there which you have to generate each and every day, maybe on a daily basis, weekly, monthly or quarterly basis. Okay, like some of the attributes, goes, change, rest of the things are static. Okay, so you are writing code again and again by just changing some of your values, which you can say is the dynamic. So why you are writing code again and again? You can just create a function, or in our case we call it as a macro. We can just reduce the amount of code. Okay, so with the help of the macro variable in the SAS macro, if anyone who doesn't know anything about SAS code, he can also generate the code. We can just guide him that you have to just do a small modification in your percentage let statement, and the rest of the things automatically done by the macro. I think we already discussed this thing in the last class, where we are doing a small modification in the let statement, and our macro was calling and the entire report was generating. Yeah, here. So here I am just changing my dataset name and I am calling this macro. Okay, so by using these two things, I am performing a proc print statement, which is this one. Because in this case I am using very simple and very formal one. But maybe when you're working on the real-time scenario, maybe you have to deal with the very big macros. Basically, macros are nothing. It's just your repetition of codes. Okay, so I already told you that you have all this, you have a lot of things are static, only some of things are dynamic. But for this dynamic changes, you have to write the code, same code again and again, maybe 10 times or 20 times or maybe every day or every week. But using the macro, you can make your dynamic stuff as a macro variable and then you can just reduce your amount of code. Okay. So any doubt or any question? Okay. So the definition of macro is simple. It's just used to reduce the amount of code entered to perform common tasks. So I already told you that if you have to perform some task again and again, then you have to write code every day or again and again. So just make it as a dynamic. We use a macro. Okay, and again same thing. Use for the tasks that are repeated in a number of programs and a number of different places within a program. So sometimes your repetitions are there. To avoid the repetitions, you will use the SAS macros. So I am just giving a small example in the down. I am taking a very small example, proc print. So we already discussed that what the proc print does. It just print your entire data into your result window. Okay. So let's assume that. So remember, this is my dataset name. So when I'm running it, I'm getting some data. This is for the training.home address. This is training.weather. And this is training.emp. Okay. So here you can see if you have to create a macro for this code. So here you can see that the proc print data equal, proc print data equal, all the things are same. Only your dataset name is going to change. First time is coming like training.home address, second time is coming like training.weather, third time is training.emp. Okay, training is your library name. I think we already discussed on it, and emp your dataset name, and weather and the home address. They are datasets name. Okay, so now I wanna create a macro like this one, which will print my dataset. Okay, by just passing a dynamic variable. So in this case, this should be my dynamic library along with my dataset name. So when you're talking about that, first how to define a macro. Okay, first you have to use percentage macro. Okay, percentage macro is your keyword. It tells you that you are going to start your macro definition from this place. Okay, and this is your macro name, which can be anything. You can pass it from your own side. And then your opening parenthesis where you are specifying your parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3 up to parameter n. Here you are defining your macro definition. So macro definition, I told you, is nothing, just automation of your code. Okay, which we'll discuss it later. Then percentage amend is again a keyword. It will tell you that now your macro is going to finish it. And then your macro name. So this is your starting point. This is your ending point, and the middle of it you are defining your macro. Okay, macro name is nothing, is the name of your macro. Okay, and the macro definition is nothing, I already told, is your valid SAS step. It can be either data step or prop step. So macro and the macro variable, they are very important one. If anyone has any doubt, they can stop me. Okay guys, so I'm continuing. So till now I think we are good. Any problem, any question? Cool. So in this case we are only defining our macro. Okay, just like you see in Excel, we use the sum function, sum a1 comma a2 a3. So it just perform like a1 plus a2 plus a3. Okay, so basically the definition of your function is already written in the back end. The same thing here itself. So your definition is your given by your percentage macro and the percentage amend. Now you have to call this macro. How to call this macro? Then you have to use percentile your macro name along with the parameters. Parameter 1 to 2 and up to n as per our requirement. So again I am taking a small example here. Okay. So here I am defining a macro. It's very normal macro. Very simplest. Percentage macro is your keyword which is telling that you are creating a macro. The name of your macro is mname. Okay, if you want you can define by your side. And I am not passing any parameter here. Okay, and then I am writing a definition which is a SAS step. In this case I am using a progress step. So what? Prop print data training dot. There is no cells. I am just making it. Just let me check it. If any existing. Okay, I am making it as ABC. Okay, and run and then amend is your keyword and mname your macro name. So this is your starting point. Percentage macro is telling that this is my starting point and the name of the macro is mname. Okay, amend my macro is going to my macro definition is going to finish it here, and this is my macro name, and between it my macro definition is there. Okay, so when you run this one, it will not generate any code, any results, any data step, any progress step. It will just show you that okay, there is no error, no warning, and there is no notes. Okay, so it will just tell you that okay, your macro definition is perfectly right. There is no syntax error. It's a very important one. If anyone has any doubt, they can stop me. So basically, what is the definition of this macro? Whenever you will call this macro, it will print training.abc. Okay, because in this case, I don't have any parameters, so I did not make any dynamic stuff. Okay, so again I told you, when I'm running this one, it's not generating any data set, any progress step, nothing is going to happen. The result window is empty one. Now I'm calling this macro. So when I'm calling this macro, now you can see it's printing your data set ABC, which is this one. So when you click this one, you can see it contains two columns or two objects employed in employee name is printing in your result window. Okay. So in this case, whatever will happen when you call this macro, okay, yeah, this macro will be replaced by this value. It means when you're calling by a macro, you are calling a definition of your macro. In this case, there is no dynamic feature is there because I did not use any parameter. So whenever how many times I will click this one, it will generate this window. It will print training.abc. So till now we are good. Or any question or any doubt? Now we are going to the next one. Passing information into a macro using parameters. So we are passing some information into a macro using parameters. So in this case, I did not use any parameter. So it means it's a constant. So whenever you call this macro, it will just print the data of training.abc. Now I want that this should be dynamic. My dataset name can be anything. It's not ABC. It can be like EMP, EMP1, home address, import data, PL, reading. Okay, because training, I have a training library is there and it contains like 7-8 different data sets which you can see by my arrow. ABC, EMP, EMP1, home address, import data, PL, reading, weather, XYZ. Okay, so what I am doing it, same thing, percentage macro again is a your starting point. Macro name is your name which can be anything, ABC, XYZ, anything. This is your parameter name. Fine. This is your prop print data equal. Now you are using ampersand dataset name. Why? Because your parameter is always a macro variable. Okay, and we already discussed in our last class that when we are using macro variable, then when we have to resolve or get the value of a macro variable, then you have to use ampersand sign before your macro variable name. Okay. Okay, so that's why I'm using ampersand, because my parameter are macro variables, and to get the value of your macro variable you are using the ampersand sign. In this way I'm making this value as a dynamic. Then run. Percentage amend is over. Again, it's a keyword which is telling that my macro definition is going to finish on this place and your macro name. Okay. Any question? Any doubt? Okay, so I think we are good. So any doubt or any question, then let me know. So I'm running this one. So I already told you that it will not generate anything. It will just show you that okay, the code is perfect. There is no error, no syntax error, no compiler, nothing is there. Okay. So now I'm passing this one. There is some options are there. So I am calling this macro by using. I'm just changing because this thing does not exist in my place. Okay, first I'm calling this macro. So I'm calling this macro, then it means it's printing or ABC. Okay. So when you just apply in the this log window, you can see about that your data set name has value training.abc. Okay. There is another option is because it's coming because of the M logic. Another logic your M print. Basically M print will tell you the entire SAS code which is generated by this macro definition. So you can see it here. Just yeah, this imprint. So imprint will tell you that what the SAS code is generating by your macro definition. So this is one of the testing. Okay, from M logic will tell you that what the value is taken by your parameters, what value is passing it, and mprint will generate the SAS code which is generating by this macro. Take one by one. I'm doing the another second one. Now it's printing EMP. Log window, you can see that parameter dataset name has training.emp. Okay, so mprint is also taking it. Proc print data equal to training.emp. Okay, and the next time, now it XYZ. So basically what's happening, when you're calling this macro, is taking this code, okay, and training.abc is passing to your dataset name, which already passing here, like parameter dataset name has the value training.xyz. Now this xyz is passing to this value, proc print data equal to xy training.xyz, which you can see in the using proc print data equal to training.xyz and the run. So are you able to figure that how it's working? Because now in the next I'm taking a small example where we are using 1 and 2 different macro parameters. So I'm just giving 2 minutes. Let's go through it and just let me know if you have any question or any doubt. That's a very important topic. Okay, and the M logic and the M print is your, and another step is symbol gain. It will also give the same results. Okay, this is the 2 or 3 options which will help you to just identify that your macro is working perfectly fine or not. So you can see that this is the M logic, this is symbol gain, this is the M print. I'm giving 2 minutes. Just go through it and let me know if anyone has any doubt or any question. Okay. Okay, so anyone has any doubt or any question? Okay, fine. So I'm moving to a small example. Okay. Just assume that you have one data set. Okay. ABC customer ID and the sales. Okay. And this is another data set DF. So you are looking for proc means. Okay. For data ABC, and you are specifying condition like where customer ID is equal to C1. Okay. Here you are getting analysis for sales data for customer C1. The same thing you are doing it here also, but here you are making as a customer ID C2. Okay, so here you can see there can be two dynamic things. Okay, one is your dataset name, second one is your customer ID details. Okay, so here you can see I have two data sets are there, ABC and DEF. Customer ID can be anything like it can be C1 or C2. Okay, so I'm just defining my macro. I'm using symbol gen, I'm logic, I'm print. I'm converting this code into a macro definition where I have two values which is dynamic. First thing is our dataset name. Second thing is your customer ID. First, these are the options which we already discussed it. Symbol gen, mlogic, mprint, which will help you, which help us to just identify what our macro is generating, what value is taking it. Like first thing is that you are defining your macro, percentage macro, which is your keyword. There is your macro name. This is your parameter. This is the parameter 1 and this is the parameter 2. So basically in this case what you are doing, you are passing some by default values. Okay, by using equal sign you are passing by default value. Like if you are not giving any parameter value, then by default it will take for D side it will take ABC, for customer ID it will take the C1. Okay, then your proc means data equal is keyword, then ampersand D set we already discussed it, like D set is our macro is a parameter name. So to get the value parameters is a macro variable. So to get the value of your macro variable or resolve to your macro variable, use the ampersand sign. So we are using ampersand D set. Then you can relate with it. Only ABC I am using ampersand D set. Here I am using again ampersand customer ID. So where customer ID is equal to ampersand customer ID. So this is my macro variable and ampersand to get the value of my macro variable, and then run. Then amend, I am finishing my definition of my macro variable and then the name of my macro variable. Okay. So till now we are good. Okay, any question, any doubt or regarding this example? Because in this case, I am passing some by default values. For D set by default value is ABC, for customer ID by default value is C1. Okay. Then calling my macro. So here you can see I am using only percentage and the macro name. Okay, I am not passing any parameter. So in this case, it will not give me any error. It will take by default values. So for D set by default value is ABC, and for customer ID is a C1. Just 1 minute. Okay, sorry, I just forget to run our definition. Okay, now I'm running a macro. So here you can see I'm getting the analysis for data set ABC and customer ID C1. So here you can see for M logic, like D set has a value of ABC and the customer ID is C1. For symbol gain, D set resolved to ABC. Okay, and customer ID resolved to C1. And what's your imprint? Prog means data equal to ABC, where customer ID is equal to C1 and the run. Okay, any question, any doubt? So basically just try to make your own code in a form of macro. Okay, then you can get better understanding on the how to create macros, because macro is not any other technique or any other code. It's just your existing code which you are making dynamic. So by using some of your dynamic values, then no need to repeat your code again and again. Now what I am doing it, now I am passing only a single variable. So in this case you can see I am passing only D set equal to ABC. Okay, but I am not passing the value of the customer ID. So by default we take the customer ID is equal to C1. Instead of the ABC, I will define the DEF. So I am getting for the DEF. Okay, but by default value of the customer ID is your C1, which you can see here. D set has a value of DEF. Customer ID is a C1. Here again you can see both M logic and symbol gain both gives you the same results. Prog means data equal to DEF, where customer ID is equal to C1 and the run. Okay, fine. So in this case, what I am doing it, I am passing the value of the customer ID is equal to C2. So by default value of D set is ABC, which you can see on my cursor. So again here I am running this one. So here you can see like customer ID is C2, D set as the ABC, then again prog means data equal to ABC, the customer ID is equal to C2 and the run. Okay. So always remember when you are testing your macro, always use like mlogic, symbolgan and the mprint, and then just test it that is running perfectly or not. So by watching, by looking and by analyzing your log window, you can see about that your program is giving you the perfect result or not. Okay, here also same thing. Here I am passing both values. Like customer ID is C1, D set equal to ABC, but in the reverse order. First I am specifying customer ID, then I am specifying the data set name. So again you can see customer ID is C1, D set is ABC, and mprint prog means data equal to ABC, where customer ID is equal to C1 and run. In the last case, I am just changing the value of my by default. So D set has been replaced with the DF, the customer ID has been replaced with the C2. So here you can see D set has been replaced with the DF, customer ID is C2, prog means data equal to DF, where customer ID is equal to C2 and run. So when you are using the equal sign, it means you are passing some by default values. When you don't have any parameters, then you can use by default values. Okay, any doubt, any question on this one? Okay, just go through it and let me know if anyone has any doubt or any question on it. Okay, so any doubt, any question on it? So basically in this case, we have taken a general example, okay, that how to create your macros, how to create, define your macro, definition of your macros, how to call it macro, how to use parameters, how to pass by default values. Okay, this is very important one. I already told you that The micro definition is nothing, is just your own code which you are making as a dynamic. So here you can see here I use dataset name and customer ID. Okay. So now I'm moving to the next topic. So I'm assuming that we are good. Anyone has any doubt or question, they can stop me. So basically this is one of the very important topic. Basically it's an interview question also, that like what is the difference between the positional and the keyword parameter. Okay, so there is two types of parameters. One is the positional, second one is the keyword parameters. So first we start with the positional parameters. So basically in the position parameters, we are not passing any by default value. Okay, and it take the value by the position. So here in down you can see I am creating a macro variable. Not macro variable. Percent macro is my macro keyword, my name of my macro variable. And here you can see I am not passing any by default value. I am taking two macro variables. First one is our two parameters. First one is the dataset name. Second one is the var name. And then I am using a definition proc print data equal. Then this is my resolving my macro variable name. Second, I am using the var statement. I am using the ampersand var name. Run and then amend, where I am going to finish it. My macro, and this is my macro name again. So when I am running this one, so basically when I am calling this macro, basically I just take emp. Let me just check what is any variable is there or not. Okay, I am taking the emp id. So in this case you can see training.emp is written first and then employee ID is written. So first thing is that there is no by default values are there. So you have to specify two values for two parameters. If there is one value, then it will give some error. Okay, let me first run your macro definition. Okay. So here you can see I am getting nothing in the result window. Log window you can see dataset name is a training.emp, but var name is nothing. Nothing. So no variable to print. So you have to specify both variable, and first training.emp will go to dataset name and emp id will go to the var name. Okay, so values are going based on their position. So training.emp will go to the dataset name because this is the first value and this is the first parameter. Emp id is second value and the var name is the second parameter. So in this case, values are passing based on our position. Okay, so just showing employee ID. The log window will just look out. You can see here. Dataset name is a training.emp, var name has the employee ID, proc print data equal training.emp and var employee ID and run. Okay. Any doubt? Any question? So basically, in this case, your values, as the name is specified position, it means your values are passing based on the position. That position parameter does not contain any by default value, and in this case, values are going based on the position. This is the first value and this is the second value. So first value is going to the first parameter, which is the dataset name. Second value, employee ID, is going to the second parameter, which is the where name. Okay. So now moving to the next topic is a keyword parameter. Okay, I told that parameter followed by equal sign. It means you are passing some by default values. Okay, so here you can see, I think we already discussed this one in our example in our this class itself. Like parameter 1 has a one default value 1, parameter 2 has a default value 2, and parameter n has also some default value. Then your macro definition, and then your amend and the macro name. So basically the same macro, but in this case I am just passing some by default values by using the equal sign. Here no by default value, here is a by default value is a training.emp. For where name there is no by default value, for here is the employee ID. Okay, so first again percent macro, which is your keyword, then macro variable name, then specify your first parameter is dataset name, which contains a by default value is a training.emp. Where name is your second parameter, which contains a by default value is employee ID, and then your macro definition, which says procprint data equal. Then you specifying your ampersand dataset name, which is nothing, is your again is a macro variable which you have to resolve or to get the value of the macro variable, so you are using the ampersand sign. Second, you are using the where statement in the procprint, which is a part of the procprint, and then you are using the ampersand where name, because where name is your macro variable. So to get the value of it, you are using the ampersand before this your macro variable where name, and then your run is a keyword. Then amend, you are going to finish your definition of your macro, and then this is your macro name. So first I am running this one. So in this case I am not passing any value, so by default it will take training.emp and employee ID. So you can see dataset name as a value training.emp, and where name has value employee ID. Okay, so here you can say also the resolve macro variable dataset name to the training.emp, where name resolve to employee ID, and mprint you can see the code generated by your macro is procprint data equal to training.emp. Training.emp is your by default value, where employee ID, this is again your by default value, and then run. Now I'm passing, now calling this macro. So here you can see I am passing training dot late what is, let me just check it. I have something is there. Okay, fine. I'm using the EMP one. So in this case, my dataset name value has been changed. For previously it was dot training dot emp, now is it emp1, but the value of where name is same. Okay, so when you go to the log window, parameter dataset name is a training dot emp1, and where name has a value of employee ID. Again same thing. Macro variable dataset name resolved to training dot emp1. Macro variable where name resolved to employee ID. And mprint proc print data is equal to training dot emp1. So is code. Dataset name is now training dot emp1, but in the where employee ID you can see your variable name is still employee ID, and then run. Still, until you will not work on your own side, you are not able to understand it. I already told you, create your own macro, convert your own existing code into the form of the macros, then at least you can just figure it out that how to pass a value to a parameter, how to get a value of your parameter, and how internally it works. Okay. So here you can see I'm just passing two values. So training dot employee ID 1 and the employee ID. So if you want, we can just change this value employee ID. We can take the instead of the employee ID, we can take the name. So here you can see you are calling your macro variable. So in this case, your first parameter value is training dot emp1, and second one is your name. So here you can see Data set name is the value of training dot emp1, where name is value name. So proc print data equal to training dot emp1, where name and run. And the next, I'm using the same thing, but what I'm doing it, I am just changing the sequence. First I am defining where name equal to name, and then I am defining the dataset name. Okay. So again I am getting the same results when I am looking the log window. You can see it here. First where name is the value name, and dataset name is the value training dot emp1. So macro variable dataset name resolved to training dot emp1. Macro variable where name resolved to name, and this is the imprint. Proc print data equal to training dot emp1, where name and run. Name is your variable name. Okay, don't confuse it. So that's the one of the difference between your keyword and the position parameter. So I already told you in the position parameter you don't specify any by default value, where in the keyword you are defining some by default values. Okay, in position parameter it takes the value by position. In case of the keyword parameters, you can just parameter always followed by the equal sign, and it can be in any order, and you no need to specify all the parameter values because you already specify some of the by default values. While in the case of the position parameter you have to specify all the values because there is no by default values. Okay, there is a difference between, this is the difference between your keyword and the position parameter, and this is the one of the most important interview question. Okay, so I am just giving you 2 minutes. Just go through it, then if you have any problem with the positional and the keyword parameter, then just let me know. Okay. Okay, so anyone has any doubt or any question? So anyone has any question or any doubt regarding today's class? Okay guys, so till now we already discussed the data step, proc step and SAS macros. So in the next classes we will work on the SAS SQL. Okay, so that's it for today. So I'm just giving if anyone has any doubt and question, they can reach out to me on my mail ID and my phone number is already there for you guys. Okay, so that's it for today. Good night.